On today's episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast, we are joined by another Pistons fan that's not living in the United States. Another cool Piston fandom story. Let's get into it on today's episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast.
You are Locked On Pistons, your daily Detroit Pistons podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's the deal? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast. Per usual, I'm your host, Kuka Hill. I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. And if you haven't already, head to our YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button. It's the best way to support the podcast. Or if you're listening to one of the podcast platforms, go down below, leave us a 5-star review. That's another great way to support the podcast. So, on today's episode, we're having another episode in the series of Fan Joins the Podcast. We've had 2 episodes thus far. We had Tyler, who lives in the Metro Detroit area, the first episode. Then the second episode, we had Mario on from Brazil, a Pistons fan from Brazil, gave us a really cool story about how he became a Pistons fan from overseas. And today's episode, we are joined by another fan from overseas, currently in Italy. I think this is going to be really fun. It's going to be really interesting. I love hearing all the Piston stories, all the Piston fandom stories from people who aren't from Detroit, aren't growing up in Detroit. How did they become Pistons fans? I think it's really cool to hear those kind of stories. If you want to find your way or give yourself the best chance to show up on one of these podcasts, send me your best Piston fandom story. We'll be doing an episode every week, and I'll be picking the most interesting story every single week. And if you get selected, obviously, you need to have at least a mic, a webcam or camera, and a really cool story. So let me know your guys' stories in the comment section down below or DM me over at Twitter at Kukahill. But without further ado, let's go ahead and bring on our fan from Italy, Filippo. How you doing, man? Thank you so much for coming on.
For having me today. It is really exciting to be here to this podcast that from 2 years.
Thank you, man. So let's go ahead and get into it, man. So obviously you didn't grow up in Detroit. You don't currently live in Detroit. So how is it? Go ahead and let everybody know your background. How did you become a Pistons fan?
Well, I have part of my families after the World War II. There were father's aunt that migrated to Detroit, and there was, and probably there still is, a small community of people coming from on the East Coast, on the Rimini area. In Detroit, there is a community of people coming in the 50s, arriving to work, and so they Detroit in the 50s, and then later on in the 80s, they started to come on visit on holidays for 1 month. So as my family, my family was part of the tour. So every year in August, since I was a very young kid, they came to me jerseys and t-shirts of the Pistons, the Lions, the Tigers, and that was the 80s. So I started to know the first Isaiah Thomas jersey, of course. At the same time, I was starting to, so it was almost natural for me to start to follow the NBA, to look with a specific interest to the Detroit team. And it was a fantastic Detroit team because I started to love Isaiah Thomas, Bill favorite players, all-time favorites, Joe Dumas, Vinnie Johnson, yeah, those guys. And then, and later on with Wallace, the Billups, etc., etc. So from that time, since I was a child, so I'm a Piston fan from.
Yeah, that's super cool, man. I love hearing that. So let's go ahead and get a little bit deeper into it. So you talked about how obviously you started out with the Bad Boy Pistons. Who was your favorite Bad Boy Piston from that era? Was it Isaiah Thomas?
Bill and Bear, because to me he didn't have the same talent of the other, but he could compensate a lot of character with a lot of personality. Let's call it. So for me, it's an example of if you have the will, it teaches you how far you can go if you want to go. if you
Super cool, man. Super cool. So you let me know in your when you DM'd me your story, you told me that you guys have a Facebook group of Pistons fans just from Italy. How many people are in that Facebook group, and how? Did you hear any crazy stories in there about how people are becoming? Is it the same
yeah
story of how you became a Pistons fan, or how's that going? I don't think anybody, at least over here, would assume that there's a group put together in Italy to support the Pistons.
yeah it's a Facebook group called Detroit Pistons Italia, and we are 80 people, but very 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 Pistons. So so we are very active. We had a meeting because we are all over Italy, from north to south, over Italy. All our stories are different, and it was last month, 1 month ago, approximately, we met in my town of us, but we met to have a Piston night and to have dinner together. In Italy, happened at 2:00 in the morning, so we long dinner before, and all the night Pistons talk until we reached the draft, and finally we have the player we hope to have. So
Yeah,
it was
absolutely.
fun.
Absolutely, man. 2:00 in the morning, man. That takes a lot of commitment right there. I don't know, man. I don't know if I could do that kind of thing, man. I cover the team. I don't know if I could do the 2 in the morning, man. That's pretty late. But that shows the commitment from you guys, bro. That's really cool. I think something, and obviously we'll continue talking to Filippo, but something I'm learning from just 3 episodes thus far is that, and again, I'm getting all kinds of messages and stories from people all over the world, and it's really cool to hear everybody's story about how they became Pistons fan. Again, I don't think a lot of people, at least I don't know, I can speak for people around my age in Detroit. I don't think a lot of us would assume that there's a ton of Pistons fans around the world because they haven't been good for a long time. It's been like 14 years since they've really been good. So to hear these stories and see how many people, see how many fans are not just in Detroit, or not just in the United States, but in Mexico, in Italy, in Brazil, in Africa, in Australia. Like there's so many fans everywhere. I think it's so cool to hear about that. And I think it absolutely is amazing that you guys have a group in Italy and you guys get to meet up for big Piston events. Like meeting up for the Pistons draft, I have to assume that was probably a lot of fun and pretty cool, especially once the Kings selected Keegan Murray and we were able to get Jay and Ivy. I'm sure everyone was really ecstatic about that.
Yeah, sure. Well, I was not Keegan Murray as well, but we all were thinking that Jaden Ivey got before. So we didn't expect to have this opportunity, and at the end, during, I believe that this draft was fantastic. Finally, after years where we selected Dumbuya, which is okay, good player, but that's it. Or yes, we're waiting Killian Hayes to become something important, which still is not. With the third, we had 2 nice picks finally, but that was the first pick, so that was easy to pick the best one. Even it does that they can select very bad even with the second choice for instance.
No, yeah, being able to get Jay and Ivy and Jalen Duren definitely made it a really fun night for the Pistons fandom, Pistons fan base, the Pistons community, and just overall the organization. And I know they were extremely excited that they were able to get Ivy and Duren in this past draft. But we're gonna go ahead and go to the ad break but when we come back, I should say, we'll talk a little bit more about how Filippo became a Pistons fan. We'll got a little bit about how, or the players that he liked from the Bad Boys. We'll talk a little bit about the going to work Pistons. Obviously, that was the last team, the last era where the Pistons were legitimately really good. We'll get some of his thoughts on that team. And then we'll ask him about this young core. He's kind of talked about it a little bit. We'll talk about this new young core that the Pistons have moving forward, and if he's excited, how's he feeling about it. We'll talk about all that when we come back. But first, I have to tell you guys about one of our sponsors, BetOnline.net. BetOnline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check on all your sports betting needs. Find all your favorite sports and events at the #1 online source for odds, lines, and games. Find reviews and news for every league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all your sports wagering information. From live in-game betting, scores, and podcasts, they have you absolutely covered. Head to BetOnline today or use your mobile device to learn more about their trends and action today. And if you head over to betonline.net, you'll see in the basketball section they already have the odds for who will win the championship next season. They have the Boston Celtics leading the way as the favorites to win the championship. I'm going to go ahead and go with the Milwaukee Bucks, but let me know what you guys think. Or again, you can head over to betonline.net right now and check all that out by using your mobile device to learn more about their trends and action today. BetOnline, where the game starts. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. And if you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button. It's the best way to support the podcast. Or even listen to this on one of the podcast platforms, go down below, leave a 5-star review. That's another great way to support the podcast. All right, Filippo. So you talked a little bit about the Bad Boys, how it all started. Obviously, you fast forward a decade or so, a little over a decade, and you get another championship with the going to work guys. You got Chauncey Billups, you got Rip, you got Tayshaun, Ben, Rashid, a few guys coming off the bench, Corliss Williamson, those kind of guys. I know you said that Bill Laimbeer was your favorite player from the Bad Boys era. I'm gonna go ahead and take a swing for the fence and take a guess who I think your favorite player was for the going to work team. Then I'm gonna say, is Ben Wallace your favorite player from the going to work team? Yes or no?
Yeah, but also Tayshaun Prince, because I like a lot players, and I love Tayshaun Prince a lot. Yeah, I bet you selected him, you picked him for your team, right?
Yes.
We would need, Tayshaun Prince could be a very helpful in the kind of game they're playing today. I loved him a lot. Of course, because he was an undersized center, but so strong on defense, so strong, and he could play so well. That was a team. Again, it was a fantastic team. All the five, at least, I believe, all the fans are in love with them, because they all were with his top shots and with the scoring. Rashid, of course, but Rashid is not just basketball. Rashid is something more. It's like philosophy. I mean, it's something more. So that team was really fun. I still remember, because the nights I spent watching the games, the finals, was exciting, and I believe that at least one title more. One title was not enough for they could win one more, at least.
Yeah, I think, and we talked about that a little bit actually with Ryan Field when we brought him on the podcast, the former Pistons broadcaster, and he kind of talked about that this team or the going to work team, they had started out as a team that people were starting to consider overachievers, and by the end of their era, people look back on them now and call them underachievers. And I don't know how many teams that you can go back in history and look at that people are saying were overachievers, and by the end of their era, now they're underachievers because they didn't win enough titles. At first, it was, oh, they shouldn't have even won
true.
one. They shouldn't have even won one. Oh, they won one, that was lucky. To now, oh, they should have won two. They should have won three. Like they didn't complete their their potential. And I think a lot of fans obviously still very much love that team and are very happy about what they brought in 2004. I do think that there's a lot of fans as well that probably think they should have won in 2005 or 2006 or got another championship somewhere along the way during their 6 straight trips to the Eastern Conference Finals. So Well, obviously, very happy about the 2004 championship, but yeah, I think they definitely, even Chauncey and even Rip, I've seen them talk about, it, even Ben too. I've seen them all talk about how they believe they should have won more than just one championship. They feel like they kind of let it down a little bit by not winning multiple. But one championship is hard to do itself, and they did it by beating Shaq and Kobe, and that's pretty astonishing. That's pretty. It was in a basically a sweep. So it definitely was super cool and an amazing achievement for them, and definitely have made it to where they're going to be loved by the city and their fan base forever, basically. But obviously, that the good times didn't last forever. They ended up, taking away pieces by piece by piece by piece of the team. Obviously, it started with Ben in 06. He ended up leaving to go to Chicago. And then the Pistons ended up trading Chauncey for, the classic trade for Allen Iverson. Then you had the whole stuff happen with Rip and the coaching staff. He eventually left. Just be honest with me here for a second. During those rough times, did you remain a Pistons fan, even when they traded Chauncey for AI, and then Rip basically led a riot against their head coach John Kuster? Like when all those things were going wrong for the Pistons, and they had bad pick after bad pick, and just weren't able to really put anything together. And it's bad signing after bad signing. Charlie Villanueva, Ben Gordon, Josh Smith. I think at least this is it's going to be interesting to hear your answer. I'm assuming you're going to say yes. I wouldn't be shocked if you said no, but I feel like from at least my perspective, for someone in Detroit, in the Detroit area, at that time I would always think to myself, man, if I wasn't from here, man, I would just go find a new team. I can't do this. If I wasn't here, if I wasn't already a Pistons fan, if I wasn't born in Detroit, I don't know if I could sit around and watch this Josh Smith long twos all the time. I don't know if I could sit around and watch the Ben Gordons and the Charlie Villanuevas and all that stuff. So I'm interested to see, like, if you did remain a fan during those times, what was it that kept you going during those times?
Well, that's a good question. But by the way, to support a team, you don't change the team ever. It's like your mother. You don't change your mother. Always your team in the good times and in the bad times. But of course, a team which plays like, let's say, very bad, engagement is lower. The engagement is lower. So of course you don't watch all games of the seasons, and maybe you watch some more games because they played a fantastic basketball like 10 years ago. If you love basketball, so you prefer to watch the San Antonio game, or I enjoyed the finals. I enjoyed Boston I enjoyed their game. So some, but you don't change the team, never. Also, it was I didn't like Van Gundy era, and I know that you disagree, but I believe the worst moves that the team made, because they much more than Anthony Davis, for instance, and it was not his 20s. He was a completely different player, taking the ball in his half court, bringing the ball in the other half court, keeping it for 20 seconds, and then this is not the kind of it was killing our offense, I believe. But the other players could do in the offense couldn't emerge with this game, and especially what Van Gundy did with that operation, he sold the future of the team for many years to come. From some years, from 2 years now, 2-3 years, don't remember, from scratch, from zero. Luckily, now there is Troy Weaver. Looks like he knows what he's doing, and that's fine. And the hope is that every year we will see better basketball. This is the hope, and this is happening. Actually, this is happening.
Yeah, so there's something else I want to kind of ask you about and dive a little deeper into. So you talked about this a little bit with the first fan that came on, Tyler. Then we talked about it a little bit with Mario from Brazil in the second episode. So this will be the last thing I ask you. Then we'll move on to the next segment. But so like during the early 2010s, I was really young. I was like 12 years old. And again, the team just wasn't very good at all. So, but despite that, there was always like that one player that made me want to tune in still. There was always like that a few players that kept me wanting to watch the team and a team I really liked. I remember early on Brandon Knight. I was a fan of Brandon Knight. There was a commercial when he was doing ball handling drills. I used to go outside and do the same ball handling drill all the time. I like Brandon Knight, but really I would say for me, it was Andre Drummond that kept me interested and kept me believing in the team, even when the team wasn't that great. It kept me believing in the team, even throughout that time period. What team would you say, or not team, what player would you say during those times, if there is a player, or even if there's multiple players, from like the early 2010s to the mid 2010s, what player kept your engagement level there with the Pistons, and who did you enjoy watching the most that made it somewhat fun for you, even when they weren't that good?
Well, I loved Andrew Dim. Uh, and same as you, I was hoping he could be take us to the next level. And but also Reggie Jackson I liked. But the problem with Reggie was that every night your player was entering the ground. I mean, because you could have and you could have an ugly one. So, but he got the skills. You never could tell before if he was going to use them or not. but I think he's a fantastic player. I loved Anthony Tolliver.
Yeah, a lot of fans did.
Yeah. And when you wear the Pistons jersey, you look at him with a more positive say. Okay, let's say. I don't remember something else. Okay, Tobias said Marcus Morris. Last guys, good on defense. So that's the kind of guys, the kind of players I like, because I learned from the Pistons that defense brings you. That I learned from the bad boys first, and from the going to work team then. Mastering on defense, and when you see, that's another reason why I didn't like Blake Griffin. You were playing with four. He was not interested at all in defending, and so that gave you a push on defense. I like them a lot.
Absolutely, man. All right, so when we come back, we'll start talking about the young core, how you feel about this new team that's been put together by Troy Weaver, some of the stars of this young team, obviously Cade Cunningham leading the way. We'll talk about how you feel about that when we come back. But first, you got to hear from some of our lovely sponsors. All right, so I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free and available on all your podcast platforms. And if you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button. It's the best way to support the podcast. Or if you listen to one of the podcast platforms, leave a 5-star review down below. That's another great way to support the podcast. All right, so we talked about the Bad Boys era when you originally became a fan. Through the time all the way to the going to work team and some of their success, some of your favorite players from then, some of the dark times over the past 10 years, how you stayed engaged during that time. But now it seems like there's brighter horizons coming here. It looks like you're starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And it started with the hiring, I would say, of Troy Weaver, and he started getting, the guys he wanted. He got rid of the entire squad that he inherited basically within a year. Sekou Doumbouya was the only person who lasted past a year, and even he got axed after a year. This roster is completely different. He got a ton of first-round picks in the first draft he got. He got Killian Hayes, Saddiq Bey, and Isaiah Stewart. He got, obviously, Cade Cunningham. In this past draft, obviously, we just talked about it a little bit. He got Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren, along with Marvin Bagley, Hamidou Diallo, Isaiah Livers as well. So you have a lot of young players and a young core that seems like the fans really believe in, and a young core that looks like they're going to be able to build together for the coming years. How do you feel about this team that Troy Weaver has put together that's being led, obviously, by their franchise player in Cade Cunningham?
Well, very interesting. I can't wait to October when it will start the season, because so many young players that, he played so well as his first year that he can only play better on his second year with a team that probably is next to him. And then one player, I expect that he will improve a lot. He played nothing in the last year because of the injuries, but the few games, 19 games, I believe, he played very well on defense, very well, very very smart on positioning. So he just played 19 games. So he has the size, he has the body, he can defend. He is smart. I expect that he would, maybe he can play in the starting five, maybe, because we have that space on number 4 position that I believe he can fit. Sadiq Bey every year is better. Last year he started poor, but then in the second part of the season he played a lot of improvement in attacking the basket. That was exactly what we were expecting, all of us, because the shoot was already fine, the commitment and the energy, and also what I like of Sadiq is that you can count on in the last minutes of the game. He will put the ball in the basket in the last minutes. That was a positive Grant, for instance. Jeremy Grant in the clutch time lost so many games because he was not the guy to go, the go-to guy. Yes, sorry. So I like this team. Isaiah Stewart, his attitude. It's impossible if you're a Piston fan to love Isaiah Stewart. Also for what he did, also for what James showed a lot of Piston pride, and it's impossible not to love him. At the same time, I'm not so sure he can play the 4. He is really undersized to play the, and sometimes with big centers you can clearly on his first year he was shooting very well. He didn't try too much. He didn't shoot that much from strange. I mean, if he didn't do it, it's because the coach didn't have. It's very strange that now they are considering to try him as a 4 number when they didn't try him as a 4 last year. That was the right season to try it, to test him. So, and then Keenan Hayes. I like him on defense. I like him very much on defense. Good mobility. I like him on defense. You can tell he has a great vision. So he picks the bunny from the cylinder. He can give you a dish that you didn't expect. So he has it. Somewhere he has it. But to play in an NBA with that wants to fight for the playoff, you must give much more. I don't like. So I hope this summer he worked a lot on that because he doesn't have a nice shot. But at the same time, he's still young, so this he can still improve. He's still 21. He didn't play that much. Played something more last season. There is still time. But if he, I believe he's done with the Pistons. I believe.
All right, so let me get your thoughts on this. So, and this is what we'll end the podcast with. There's obviously the Troy Weaver decided to very clearly go the route of going another year with his young core. Like, there's a lot of rumors about him possibly going after DeAndre Ayton free agency, the Pistons possibly being big players in free agency and using their cap space. And instead of doing that, he came out, obviously took on those big contracts or those expiring contracts from the Knicks with Kemba Walker, the team option ones, Alec Burks, known as Lowell, to get the 13th pick with Jalen Duren. He brought back Marvin Bagley, and he decided to go another year with the young guys. And from my perspective, it looks like he's committing to another development year. It looks like he's understanding that, hey, this team, they need another year to grow together. I believe in this young core. Let's see them grow together and see what they look like. Do you think that this team is going to be closer? And then we'll wrap up the podcast there. I don't want to take too much of your time, but do you think this team will be closer to a bottom 5 team in the NBA, or they'll be closer to a play-in team in the NBA this upcoming season?
Well, my hope is that they would be closer to the team, but I'm not sure there is power to reach that position. I mean, if basketball, if we can improve the young core, they are still very young. Isaiah Lever is 24, but all the other are between 21, 22, very young. So if we can bring all these people to and go strong for the play-in next season, okay, it will be fine. It will be. Jalen Duren is 18, I believe. So
yep, I believe he's going to be the youngest player in the NBA this season.
Yeah, we have a lot of very, very good ingredients to cook our side. Maybe the first cake will not come so good, but the second it will be for sure. That's something more. And next year, the salary cap will be very, very interesting. Have a lot of space to and also maybe everybody's saying next draft will give the opportunity to have so I invite you to see it in Italy next year, because we meeting on the NBA night, on the draft night. so maybe it will not be so bad to have a season in the last 5. We will find ourselves with a very nice pick on the next draft and a lot of space to fill with stronger players. They were not too good free agents this season. So maybe everything under control. I hope so.
Yeah, I think we all hope so. We'll see how it goes. I think at the very least, it's going to be a very fun season this year with all the young guys, with the new picks of Jane Ivey and Jalen Duren. It's definitely going to be a lot of fun for Pistons fans this year, whether it translates to a lot of wins, whether it translates to more wins than last year. I don't think it matters too much. I think everyone should be more concerned about if guys are getting better, if players are showing improvement. If they're doing that while having fun out there, I think everyone's going to be happy with that. So, but
Yeah.
Filippo, I want to thank you, man, for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate you coming on, man. Another great story, another great podcast, recording with someone from outside Detroit, from someone outside the country who finds themselves to be a Pistons fan. I'm enjoying these episodes. I hope all of you guys listening are as well. It's really cool to hear the different perspectives from people all over the world. It's again, like I said, I can't say enough. It's really cool. I really love this series I'm doing. I think it's super, super dope. So Thank you, Filippo, for joining, man. If you guys want to find your way on the podcast, you're welcome. If you want to come on the podcast, send me your best Piston fandom story. Make sure you have a camera and a mic. If you have those three things, you can come on the podcast. We'll have you on. We'll talk about how you became a Pistons fan, some of your best favorite Piston memories, favorite moments, and what you think about this team moving forward. But that's all I've got for you guys today. Thank you guys for listening to today's episode. Thank you for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We are free to available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button, or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you listen to this on. And until next week, I'll see you guys then. Again, thank you, Filippo, for joining, and I'll see you guys later. Peace out, everybody.